So we are going to be going over how to roast a chicken. Roasting a chicken seems to be something that people are very intimidated to do. And it's usually because of one of two reasons. The first is that they overcook it. They're scared they're going to undercook it, and then they overcook it, and then it turns out just being kind of yucky. And the other is because there seems to be a lot of rules associated with how to roast a chicken. And the funny part about that is that there aren't any hard and fast rules on how to roast a chicken. It's actually one of the simplest things that you can do in the kitchen. And I think we put too much pressure on ourselves trying to get it just right and follow all the rules. So tonight I'm going to go over some myths. I'm going to go over some ways that you can make it your own roast chicken. Make it easy, because really it is one of the easiest one-pan dishes, probably the original one-pan dish, before that even became a thing and a buzzword, that there is out there. It's got starch, it's got the potatoes, if you use potatoes, it's got starch, it's got vegetables, it's got chicken, and it's got butter, which is obviously the fourth food group, right? So the first thing that people ask the most when we're roasting a chicken is how to get crispy skin. That seems to be everybody's goal, is how to get crispy skin. And there are 3 good ways to get crispy skin. The first method is to leave it uncovered in your refrigerator for up to 24 hours. I know that sounds gross to a lot of people, but it's actually the preferred method of chefs. This one was taken out during my daughter's nap time, so what, a couple hours ago, 5 hours ago? So it's been in the refrigerator covered for about 5 hours. You can see that it's kind of changing color a little bit. It's a little bit more fleshy, a little bit more pink, a little bit of yellow. The skin is really just starting to dry up. All that moisture is coming out of it. So I rinsed it, I patted it dry, and I just shoved it in the fridge. The second way is how we get crispy duck skin for like duck a la orange or other types of things. And it's a little bit more risky, shall we say. We're going to pierce a bunch of holes in the skin with a fork, and then we're going to pour boiling water over it. And just like that boiling water, and I hate to use this, but it's the best way to describe it, would burn your skin and make it shrivel up, it's going to do the same thing to the skin on a chicken or a duck. And it's fast, so it's not going to really cook the meat below it, but it'll be a fast way to really dry out your skin. The third way, and the method that I typically use, is just using a lot of salt. I like salt, I'm a salt person. It helps dry out the skin while it's baking. You don't have to do a lot of prep work. You can rinse it, pat it dry, salt it up, and bake it, roast it, without having to do a lot of prep work. So tonight, this chicken is going to have the double treatment, the fridge treatment and some salt treatment. If you're on a low sodium diet, that's probably not the best one for you, but you can also adjust how much salt you're using. A lot of it also comes off during the cooking process, so you don't have to worry as much about that. So this is our chicken. He's been dried out, he's been patted dry, and the first thing we're going to do to focus on is butter. Some people like to use olive oil, but I really like butter, guys. So I have butter here. This is a little over a cup that's been out at room temperature, and I have a fork. When you're mixing butter at room temperature, a fork is actually a little bit easier to mix it with. It's almost like a pastry cutter, and I can get stuff in there a little bit more easily. So this is unsalted butter. I want to use unsalted butter because I'm going to add more salt to the exterior of this chicken. You also don't want it to be too salty. This way I know I can adjust the salt just the way I like it. I'm going to add poultry seasoning, and if you click on some of these recipes here, there's a homemade poultry seasoning, or you could buy it recipe on the blog. And I'm also going to use some fresh herbs. You don't have to use fresh herbs, and you can use whatever fresh herbs you want to use. Again, not a hard and fast rule about what to use. If you're going to use fresh herbs, the general rule is that you use about 1 tablespoon of fresh herb as you would for dry herbs. So 2 other tricks, whether you're using fresh herbs or dry herbs. Sometimes, I don't know how many of you guys frequent bars, but you'll see bartenders or chefs whack their herbs. They're trying to break open some of those little tendons. It releases the oils in the herb and the fragrance, making them more aromatic and also making it easier for whatever you're putting it in to infuse the flavor of the herb. If you're using a dry herb, you want to do kind of the same thing. You can also take this between your hands and go like this, but then you're going to end up with that smell on your hand. And it's not a bad thing to have thyme on your hand, but get it? Thyme on my hands? But whatever's on your hands is now not in your butter, and you want to be careful with that. So while I'm doing this with the thyme, don't worry about getting a couple of the little woody pieces in. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't have to be all leaves. I'm just breaking this up with my fingers as I go. I'm going to use about 1 tablespoon of fresh thyme here. Getting it all in there, getting those woody pieces out. So another thing with dried herbs is that they do expire. Dried herbs that aren't whole, so if you had like a whole nutmeg or a whole cinnamon stick, last a year to a year and a half, whereas other things that are already pre-ground, like if you had a ground thyme, only last about 6 months. Most people sit around for way longer than that. They lose their potency, they lose their flavor. So one of the things that you want to do before you use them is smell them. If they don't smell fragrant, then they're probably no good. I also use a label maker and put the date that I purchased it on the top lid so that I know when to go through and get rid of them. And I usually purchase them in the smaller bottles instead of the big ones, unless it's something I use all the time, like garlic powder, onion powder, just so that I don't waste it when I go to throw it away after it's gone bad. But to bring out some of the life in an older bottle of spices, kind of want to do the same thing we just did with the fresh. You'll put that dry spice in your palm, rub it together a little bit. I always smell it because I just want to make sure that it is fragrant, and that means that it's still good. And then put it in whatever I'm putting it in. If it's a little bit older, you'll probably want to taste test it along the way, just to make sure you don't need to add more, because if it is a little bit older, you might need to double up on the amount of dry spice that you add. So I'm also going to use rosemary. You can use, and I'm using kitchen shears. This is another trick. Instead of using a knife, you need a really sharp knife to chop herbs really well. And I find that using kitchen shears to mince it up like this is just faster and easier. I'm going to just kind of go like this around the woody stem of the rosemary to get it on in there. And again, I'm not worried about it being uniform and being small and the littlest, tiniest mince that you ever did see. I really don't care. It's a roasted chicken. It's kind of rustic. It's the beauty of it. I have a little piece of hardwood in there. I'm going to take that out. So you can also use this. So I've only cut off part of this. I'd probably cut off more if I was doing it not timed. I'm going to use that fork, just like a pastry cutter, and I'm going to blend this into the butter. This seems like a lot of butter, I know, but I'd rather have more and throw out a little bit than not have enough and not have a piece of the chicken be buttered. This is going to go under the skin, and as the chicken cooks, it's going to baste off underneath, and that's what's going to ultimately flavor not only the chicken, but the vegetables that we're going to put in. So the vegetables aren't going to need any additional seasoning when we arrange them around the chicken. I'm going to make sure this is good and even, especially with that poultry seasoning in there, which also has a little bit of salt in it. If you make it at home, and I almost guarantee you 99% of you have all of the ingredients you need to make homemade poultry seasoning in your own pantry. And again, the benefit there is you can control the amount of salt, and good salt at that, not yucky iodized salt. So I'm going to, Julie Willis, you always think I'm awkward. Why do you think I'm awkward? Hello, everybody. I love crispy chicken skin too. Hi, Denise, welcome. Joelle, John, Monique, I haven't seen a lot of you guys in a long time. It's really good to see everybody. I'm gonna refresh this in a few minutes to make sure that I have all of the comments that are coming in, because sometimes they don't come in live for me and I see them afterwards and I feel bad. So I'm gonna use rubber gloves here, just like a doctor, because I don't want to spend a ton of time washing my hands and off screen for you guys while I wash chicken juice off of me. I'm going to put this behind. So we're going to put this underneath the chicken skin. The skin's going to help hold it in place. Some people lather it on the outside, but what happens when butter melts? It just goes off. And that's not such a bad thing because it's going to baste the vegetables. But we want some of it to stay under the skin and hold it there. So the herbs are going to be held in place by the chicken skin. So I am going to start on the back side, and this little guy actually has one of these little self-timer things in it like turkeys do. I hate these. I don't find them reliable. I think having a digital meat thermometer is the only real way to go. So I'm going to set this aside before I get started. So I'm going to start up here around the bottom, and I'm going to just use my fingers to pull away the skin. You can see it's starting to loosen. And then I'm just going to take butter with my hands. I'm going to massage it into my chicken. It doesn't have to be equal because it's kind of hard to get it in there evenly in like a small layer just because it's a little bit slimy. And this one, as you can see, isn't terribly dry. The drier it is, the easier it is to get it in there in an even layer. But it's butter. It's going to melt. So it's going to pool around and it's going to move into all of these little pockets. And I can actually press it from the outside. If you can see that there, I can press it from the outside so that it gets in there and massages in real well. Another trick the places, because it's hard to get your hands all the way in there, is to use the back of a spoon. So I'm going to use the spoon side down, and like here where the chicken legs are, I don't know if you can see this, I can get in all the way there into the chicken leg, which is an area that's typically kind of challenging to get into. Take a little bit of butter, get in there, wipe it off, and now I've got butter in this chicken leg, which is hard to get to with your fingers. So you can use it to spread them open, get it on in there, and then move it around. Okay, so I've got the back. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the other side here. So the next big question about cooking a chicken is usually, is it breast side up or breast side down? And there are people that have very strong opinions, and both for very good reasons. If you do it breast side down, then all of this butter is essentially self-basting. It's going to run down the side of the chicken into the breast. It's going to stay nice and moist. It's going to baste itself, really. But that's also the area that's the thickest and needs to cook the most to be done. So you're going to end up with crispy skin on the bottom of your chicken. It's going to cook for longer, so any of the meat that's down here is not going to be as well cooked. You're going to have to cook it for longer. And the skin on the breast, which is usually the thing that people fight over, isn't going to be nice and crispy because it's underneath where all of this butter is kind of pooling and all the chicken juices are pooling. Again, not the worst thing in the world, just not what you're going for. Other people do breast up, but then the problem is that it cooks faster, but sometimes, especially if you overcook it, which is the number one reason that people have problems with chickens, is that, sorry, I lost my train of thought here trying to make sure my butter was all good, is that they overcook it. It gets too brown, it gets too dry, and then it's overcooked because they were so worried about making sure that everything got cooked. Use them for chopping jalapenos, messy stuff like this. Okay. So next I'm actually going to truss the chicken real quick. I'm not going to do a really tight truss because I don't really need to, and if you want to skip this step, you can skip this step altogether if you'd like. It's not really that huge. I have this cooking twine here, and I love this one because it has a little razor blade on the top of it. So I don't have to use any hands, get my hands dirty, and I can go ahead and cut off that piece of twine right there. Some people also like to stuff their chicken. I have made them stuffed with vegetables. Sometimes I put the extra butter in the cavity. I have made them unstuffed, and really I don't find that it changes the flavor at all. I do like to put these two legs together to tuck them in. Otherwise, these legs cook too fast. If they're in, it's a thicker piece of meat, so it cooks slower and it'll all be done at the same time. Same with these two little flappers that are on the side here. I'm going to take them and kind of bend them back. But people usually just don't even eat them anyway, so you don't really have to worry about that. But that makes it thicker so it all cooks more evenly. Okay, so after you've bent your chicken into all of these different models here, we are going to do a salt and pepper crust. This is going to help dry out the skin. We're just going to massage it in. You don't need olive oil to make it stick. In fact, it sticks really well to dry skin, and there might be a little bit of residual butter on there. I usually use about a tablespoon, maybe a little bit more than a tablespoon when I'm doing this. So back to the breast side down or breast side up debate. I do it half and half. So I start my chicken with the breast side down, and about halfway through cooking, I use a pair of tongs. I put them on the inside of the cavity like this, and I flip it. Now I've got a nice crispy skin on the bottom, but I'm also going to get a nice crispy skin on the top without it cooking too long. It's been self-basting, that beginning part, and everything is going to cook more evenly. So I'm going to put this bad boy right into my big roasting pan here and move this stuff out of the way and take off my gloves. I'm going to check to see if we have any questions. Yes, lemons, Michelle. A lot of people use lemons. A lot of people like to add that citrus, either putting lemon over the top or putting lemons in the cavity. Adding that acid is a great addition. You don't have to, but you can. Oranges are also wonderful depending on what time of year, and they pair fabulously with rosemary or thyme. The spoon trick. So you do the spoon upside down. I usually use a bigger spoon, like a tablespoon, upside down, and you put it, you can get into these areas that maybe your fingers don't reach, or you don't want to tear the skin, because as soon as you tear the skin, now you've got a hole and all that the butter's going to bubble out. So use the spoon to get into the legs and the thighs and the longer areas that are harder to get into. And you can put the butter right in the spoon, put it in there, manipulate it out with your finger, and it's easy to go. Beer can chicken, Gretchen. Beer can chicken is also great. It's another type of roasted chicken, and I actually have a recipe for it on the blog. I'll pop it in a minute here. But beer is another wonderful and acidic way to add flavor and moisture to chicken. You want to use a flavorful beer though. Don't use a Miller Lite or Coors Light or something that doesn't have a lot of flavor. Basically, you're going to put the beer in the chicken. You have to drink some of it first, so that's the first step. Put the beer up in the chicken and you actually cook it upright. And as the beer fizzles out, it creates moisture. So you rarely get a really crispy skin with beer can chicken, but you get a really interesting flavor. I make my beer can chicken with a cola barbecue sauce that I make with Coke or Pepsi or something, so it's a very interesting flavor. Whole or sliced up lemons, slice them up. Slice up those lemons when you put them in there. You can even do wedges, it's not a big deal. You can even put slices of lemon underneath the skin along with the butter, so the skin really holds the lemon in there, especially if you want to do like a lemon pepper chicken. So the beauty of this is that you can change the flavors to whatever you want them to be. You could do a lemon pepper and omit some of the spices. You could do oregano and use like an Italian blend, like an Italian seasoning. You could do whatever you want, really. You can make it unique every single time you make it, or it could be one of those things where you're cleaning out the vegetable drawer and you're just putting in everything you got. Because the beauty of herbs, especially fresh herbs, is they really all blend together really well. Even dill will blend well with thyme and rosemary and oregano. It's a beautiful mixture and they all work well together. Yep, lemon and orange work together. You can even use a couple of limes, that's fine too. Any kind of citrus together works wonders. So now we're going to do vegetables. You want to use some hearty vegetables. So today I'm going to be using potatoes, onion, carrot, and celery. Others that I like to use are rutabaga and parsnips. I think rutabaga and parsnips are so underused and they're delicious. Parsnips are white, they're really sweet, they're kind of like carrots. Rutabaga are sweet as well. They've got kind of a waxy exterior, you need to peel them. Carrots and parsnips, you actually don't have to peel. I know most people peel them. You don't have to, as long as you scrub them with a potato scrubber. Make sure they're clean. It's just another step to save you some time. So these are some baby carrots. I have these on hand because my daughter loves baby carrots, so why do anything different? I have one whole white onion that I'm just gonna put around here as well. And a bunch of potatoes. The potatoes are the starch. You know me, if you follow me, I love color. So I get these tri-colored potatoes. I've got a purple potato in here, some red potatoes, some white potatoes. And as that butter bakes off, it's essentially going to be like making buttered potatoes. I'm also going to do celery. And celery gets a little mushy while it's in there, but I like the flavor that it adds, especially if I'm making a gravy. So I might fish the celery out before I actually put this onto a serving platter, but I want it there for the flavor. I'm going to do a little bit more onion. We're going to show you how to make that gravy next too. So the chicken's surrounded by all this goodness. You can put in some more fresh herbs. Again, as that butter comes off, those fresh herbs are just going to help flavor the butter. And one of the other things that I feel like is so underutilized, notice here I didn't use any extra oil, I didn't use anything. You don't have, the butter is going to be everything you need to season these vegetables, is celery leaves. So most people take these off and discard them. I love them. They're great for garnish. You can put them in salads. They taste delicious. So don't take these off and discard them. I'm going to use them to decorate my platter along with some more fresh herbs after my chicken comes out. So today I had a little bit of foresight and I decided, magic of television, to make you a chicken. It's in the oven. So I'm going to take this, put this back here, watch the magic of TV. As I take out my roasted chicken. So this guy's been in there for a while. I cooked him again during nap time and now he's been in the oven getting hot, so this is what hubby and I can eat for dinner. So as you see here, I've already taken the truss off because I didn't want to do that. I've got it pretty on the platter. If you're having guests, you can always dress up your platter with more fresh herbs, celery. So before you go and you serve your beautiful browned chicken, but not burnt chicken, you want to make sure that you use a meat thermometer. It needs to register in the thigh, not near the bone, at 165 degrees to make sure that it's done. And you want to let it rest for at least 10 to 15 minutes. So while you're letting it rest, that's the perfect time to make yourself a quick chicken gravy.